Welcome to the Intentional Father Podcast, where us fathers parent our children, not by accident, but with intent. I'm your host, Aaron Stroman. Attitude is everything. And if your kids have a bad attitude, this is the episode for you. Let's jump in it. I'm in the trenches with you. The parenting trenches of raising teenagers. I've been, the past couple days, I have been just getting after it with when it comes to attitude, specifically with my son. He is 14 years old. He has a bad attitude. I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why I think that is, but here's what it's not. I'm going to say what it's not. This isn't an excuse to not parent your kid's attitude. The fact that he's a teenager, he's in adolescence, he's in puberty, well, it just kind of comes with the territory. No, don't play that card. Don't give yourself that excuse, and don't give your kids that excuse. Attitude can be taught. Attitude can be learned. We need to teach our kids to have a good attitude. Now, what I love about the sports culture and social media is there are some really big sports icons that are teaching the value of good attitude. And if your kids are involved in sports, there's such a direct correlation between attitude on the court or on the field, in the arena, and attitude in life. And so, again, that's one of the reasons why I love athletics, exercise, weightlifting, is because there's this real world interpretation, especially when it comes to attitude and drive, that I think we can help our kids make the connection to. So what's the issue that I'm facing with my son? Lately, been having a bad attitude, and it's connected to being really argumentative and pride. So let's talk about being argumentative. I think part of the reason my son is really struggling with his attitude and being argumentative, one of the reasons is because he is in a class that is titled Debate and Argument. That's the title of his high school class, Debate and Argument. We've all heard of debate. But now he's starting to debate and argue everything, and it's exhausting. And so I'm having to teach him, hey, life is not an argument to be won. It's not a debate to win. In fact, very little in life comes down to winning an argument. And he's arguing with me about this, and I attacked his class a little bit, and I think he got defensive and was like, well, this is the name of the class. It's what I'm learning. I don't think the class of debate and argument is good for the average person, because there's so few areas in life where a good argument is actually productive. And I was trying to think about it, and I'm like, maybe if you're a litigation lawyer, you need to be able to argue and debate well. But even in that scenario, who are you arguing and debating against? It's against the other lawyer. You're not debating against the judge. You're not debating against the jury. You're not arguing with them. In fact, if you win the case, you don't care about the other lawyer. You do care about the judge and jury. So you're really winning them to your side. So you're not. You see what I'm saying? Like, having a good argument, what that does is when you start to argue with someone, it makes them defensive, and it makes them defend their side of the argument. And if you're trying to be productive in any way whatsoever, making someone defensive is not good. It's not productive. So I'm teaching I'm teaching this to my son. It's like the philosophy of arguing and why it's not good, why it's not productive in real life. And I get you need to have an argument. You know what an argument is good for? It's good for someone who's already on your side or seeing your perspective. It's good for reinforcing why you believe what you believe. But it's bad for persuading someone else to change their ways or their thoughts. So that's where the value of argument lies. Okay, I'll leave it at that. My son's arguing all the time. So it's like, hey, guess what? If you argue, you're going to lose in life. In fact, I had him start writing down this line. Win the argument, lose the relationship. Win the argument, lose the relationship. When you argue against someone, if you win the argument, you're going to lose the relationship. And this is an area in life where you can be right and still be wrong. It's like, who cares if you win the argument and lose your relationship? And of course, as adults, we can see, that's great advice in the workplace. That's great relational advice. It's great marital advice. Men, how many times have you argued against your wife and you win the argument, but then you damage the relationship? And all of a sudden you find yourself apologizing, like, wait, why am I apologizing? I was right. It's like, well, yeah, when you're right in the argument, but who cares if you damage the relationship? You were wrong. So I'm literally having my son write on a piece of paper this line over and over and over and over and over. Win the argument, lose the relationship. And then, I kind of watch, he writes about 10 lines, and I have a conversation with him. And then in the conversation, I say, Cage, do you understand why I don't want to argue with you about this? And he lists some reasons. I'm like, yeah, that's not what I'm looking for. Go back and keep writing. Win the argument, lose a relationship. Win the argument, lose a relationship. Hey, Cage, let's come talk. So we unpack it more, talk about it, right? His emotions are settling down. Our conversation is becoming a little more productive and meaningful. I follow up with the question, do you see why I don't want to argue with this point with you? And why I don't want you arguing? Like, I don't even want to argue about arguing with you. Why is that? And he's trying to, I don't know. Okay, go back and write. And then finally, after about like 50 times of writing this line down, okay, do you see why I don't want to argue with you about this? Because you don't want to lose the relationship? I'm like, yes, that's it. I don't want to lose a relationship with you. And I can argue and be right, but who cares if I lose a relationship? And I'm your father, you're my son. I want to preserve this relationship. So I'm not going to argue with you about it, but I am going to help parent you through it. So that opened up a whole lot more dialogue and conversation. We actually started to get somewhere. Now, his attitude, I mentioned like argument was a big part of his bad attitude. And so we're talking about the value of attitude, and my son does Brazilian jiu-jitsu with me. And so again, using the sports analogy, so beneficial, so good. It's like, okay, how can we learn from this, right? Think of how you learn jiu-jitsu. You do something, you have an instructor who teaches you a new way, a better way of doing it. In fact, how you may be doing it may be counterproductive. Like, don't do that position, do this position. Don't attack this, attack that, et cetera, et cetera. Now, do we walk away going, oh man, my instructor thinks I suck. He evaluates and criticizes everything I do. He just is, he's calling me bad all the time. No, we go away going, okay, the instructor knows what he's talking about. I have my technique, but it's not great. Sometimes my grappling intuition isn't good. There's a better way to do it. I get the feedback. I improve my skill. I improve my technique. I become a better grappler, a better jiu-jitsu practitioner. Life is good. So that's the process of parenting that I'm taking my kids through. But then they're old enough now, 14 and 15, where I can let them in on this and go, hey, I'm not criticizing you just to criticize you. I'm not trying to insult you. I'm here to make you better. You're doing it one way. There's a better way. Let's go about it. And that when you have that attitude, that learner's learning attitude, it makes you gain a whole new perspective, see things way better than how you were. And now you're ready to go, okay, maybe I should listen and do some of this stuff. So we're addressing attitude, and the other real, where the rubber meets the road point that I had to address with my son was I asked him, I said, son, when was the last time that you've admitted you were wrong? And he was like, oh, yeah, I don't, a couple weeks ago. I said, so you actually said that you were wrong? Well, I don't use those words. I don't say I was wrong, but I said my bad. Okay. Okay. Why wouldn't you say that you're wrong? Well, I just don't use those words. I don't, basically saying I don't like the way it sounds. I think he could tell that there was a point coming, and sure enough, there was. And so I was teaching my son, hey, when you're avoiding the words, I was wrong, when you were wrong, what does that cost you? And here's what it costs. When you aren't willing to admit that you're wrong, it's costing you pride. So now we're chalked up as prideful, because really that's the reason someone wouldn't admit that they're wrong when they are wrong, is because they're too prideful. That's dangerous. It costs you relationship capital. It costs you at least the perception that you're not in touch with reality. When people just aren't willing to admit they're wrong, they're delusional. At least when they're wrong. Again, that's the whole idea. In fact, even my son was like, okay, I see. You just want me to say I'm wrong. I said, no. I actually don't want you to say you're wrong. I hope you're right all the time, but you're not. So only say you're wrong when you are wrong. So there's some really great advice you can take to the bank. We talked through that. What else does it cost you? I mean, the relationships, even referrals. I worked for a guy who was wrong on a regular basis. He would never admit to it. A lot of people quit working for him, as did I. Eventually, he got fired, got a new job, didn't even last a year. And if I were to sum it up, it's because he didn't have a learner's attitude. He wasn't willing to accept criticism and feedback, constructive criticism and feedback, and he would never admit that he was wrong. And guess what? Everybody's wrong. Everybody. So just own it, admit it, and move on. Now, what does it cost you, or what do you get paid when you do admit that you're wrong? Now you're gaining some humbleness to your character. People are viewing you as a humble person. They're giving rapport. You're getting leadership credibility. And people want to follow a person who can admit that they're wrong. Wow, that's huge. Own it. Okay, now we need to adjust some things. I thought I was right. Now I'm wrong. Clearly that changes some stuff here. So, right. So now you get to integrate teamwork. I mean, you open yourself up to that constructive criticism, to feedback, and that just opens up dialogue. You're creating a safe environment for people to live. I mean, again, in the family environment, in the work environment, friendship environment, when you can admit that you're wrong, holy cow, everyone respects you. You gain respect. And so as I'm coaching my son, hey, you need to use the words, I was wrong, when you were wrong. And as we do that, parents, as we fight in these trenches for our children and walk alongside them and do this hard work of attitude and help them learn how to take that constructive criticism, how to take that feedback, how to admit that they are wrong, what the value of not winning an argument. As we do the work, we're shaping our kids, and there's so much of a kid's personality and temperament that's shaped from like birth to 2 or 3 years old. But attitude can be shaped in the teenage years. So don't give up on it. Don't quit just grinding through those parenting trenches, parenting the teenagers. And it's you will reap a reward in your own family, and you're going to be setting up your children for success in their life to come. So do the hard work. I hope this is encouragement. Obviously, I don't have it figured out perfectly. So if you have some ways to parent good attitude, please drop it in the comments. Everyone, including myself, will be grateful. And look forward to walking alongside you in this parenting journey. God bless.